Welcome to Red Pill Revolution. My name is Austin Adams. Red Pill Revolution started out with me realizing everything that I knew, everything that I believed, everything I interpret about my life is through the lens of the information I was spoon-fed as a child. Religion, politics, history, conspiracies, Hollywood, medicine, money, food, all of it. Everything we know was tactfully written to influence your decisions and your view on reality by those in power. Now, I'm on a mission to retrain and re-educate myself, to find the true reality of what is behind that curtain, and I'm taking your ass with me. Welcome to the revolution. Hello and welcome to Red Pill Revolution. My name is Austin Adams. Thank you so much for joining me. This is episode number 22 of Red Pill Revolution, and we have a lot to go over this week with everything that's happened in the United States. Now, a part of that's going to be discussing a part of the U.S. Army terminating its plans for a standardized physical fitness test. I don't know why in the world that would be, so we're going to talk about that. We're also going to discuss the hilarity that was Joe Biden going over to basically Poland to discuss with United States troops and made some mentions about how they actually should kind of expect to be going over to Ukraine, which then they had to refute and pull back on. And we're also going to discuss the Ketanji Brown Supreme Court nomination and the conversations and explosions of arguments that happen surrounding critical race theory, surrounding transgenders in sports, surrounding pedophilia and her decisions on those decisions, and so many other things. So make sure you stick around for all of that. But the first thing that we're going to discuss today is going to be the U.S. Army terminating its plans for standardized physical fitness tests. Now, this article, which was written by Rebel News, is stating that the decision follows a RAND-led study that found men could easily pass the new Army combat fitness test in comparison to women and older soldiers who were failing at noticeably higher rates. I wonder why that is. Right? Now, I find this to be quite interesting because, the Army is one of the elite fighting forces of the world, under the most elite fighting country in the world, or at least most militarily capable country on paper, and previously in other types of situations, widely accepted. I mean, we all know this, guys. There's no argument there. Or at least up until this point, if they're going to completely rid themselves of standardized physical fitness tests. Now, I was in the military, and the funny thing to know about this stuff is that even if you failed the PT test, you got like 3 months, or like even longer sometimes. Like if you were a real fat piece of garbage, and you saw people like that in the military, and this was 7 years ago. I don't know, a while ago. I was in the military. If you failed the physical fitness test, you went back and you took it again. You had time, shed some of that weight off, because most of us would just go run when we had our PT test because we were physically able to, just like this article leads to the fact that, well, men are passing the standardized physical fitness tests. And older people and women tend to not be, statistically speaking, comparatively, as much. Okay, yeah. What about this article did we not expect? I mean, that's kind of the point of a standardized physical fitness test. If you, whether you're old, whether you're young, whether you're blue or purple or man or woman or Z, Zem, Zuri, Zorro, who cares what you call yourself, you should still have to pass a physical fitness test to be a part of the military, because it's not just about you, and it's not just about your feelings. It is about saving the man next to you from being killed in action. Now, if the U.S. Army rids themselves completely of standardized physical fitness tests, and they're running through an urban combat situation, and old Tubby can't keep up with you, and now you got to go backwards to help your buddy out because you don't want him to die, and then you get shot at and killed because, you didn't have a standardized physical fitness test, and this guy never had the damn run in his whole life because they want to pad everything in the military now. Right now, it's hilarious to me that this comes on the back of mandatory vaccinations in the military. Mandatory, right? You literally can't even be in right now if you refuse it, right? Heard tons and tons of stories about this. So, they want to say it's about health. If it's about health, maybe you should be making sure that the people that are in your military are physically fit, right? Maybe you should be making sure, especially if you're in the Army and in the combat, situation, that you can run a freaking mile and a half under. For women, when I was in, it was 13 minutes. For men, so we had differentiations at that point, which is still doesn't make sense. It was like 8.5 minutes, 9 minutes to run a mile, 13 minutes to run a mile if you were a woman. Now, obviously, this is a standardized physical fitness test, so a little bit different when it came to the Army. But the fact remains the same, that if you cannot pass the situation, if you cannot pass a standardized physical fitness test, if you cannot run a mile and a half, maybe you shouldn't be in a combat situation where somebody else's life is on the line and is completely reliant on your physical and athletic abilities. How crazy of a thought. But no, we got to let the old people and the women who don't want to keep up to the physical standards of those who are actually should be in the military to have to meet those standards, right? And there's far many women who I met in the military who could run their asses off and do push-ups and are very, very physically capable. So maybe we should just have the women who can keep up in a combat situation in the military, right? And that goes for everybody, because even if you're if you work in the chow hall, you still have the opportunity at some point where they're going to ring that bell and call you into military combat. And Lord knows you should be able to run a mile and a half if that becomes the case. So this article keeps going on. Sorry for that rant. This article goes on to say the U.S. Army has terminated plans for a standardized physical fitness test for all soldiers. Following a 3-year review, women and older soldiers will only have to pass a physical fitness test with reduced standards, the military branch announced Wednesday. As detailed by The Hill, the decision follows a RAND-led study that found men could easily pass the new Army combat fitness test, in comparison to women and older soldiers who were failing at a noticeably higher rate. Indeed, the new standardized test developed for both men and women was easier for men to pass and harder for women. The test, which was made up of 6 events, was developed in 2019 and was an expansion from the 3 events: push-ups, sit-ups, and a run that soldiers were previously subject to, which is what I did. This test is an essential part of maintaining the readiness of the Army as we transform into the Army of 2030. What does that even mean? Said Army Secretary Christine Wormuth. The revisions of this ACFT are based on data and analysis, including an independent assessment required by Congress. We will continue to assess our implementation of the test to ensure it is fair and achieves our goal of strengthening the Army's fitness culture. We'll make sure it is fair and achieves the goal of strengthening the Army's fitness culture. What does that even mean? Either you have to pass a test or you don't. The Hill reported the Army first changed its fitness tests to include deadlifts, power throws, push-ups, planks, and a run and a sprint drag carry event, as well as a leg tuck that was eventually eliminated. Service leaders hoped the newer test, the first such change in more than 40 years, would develop or would better replicate tasks needed for combat while reducing the risk of injuries. But the new fitness curriculum was quickly criticized after it became clear women, older males, and National Guard and Reserve troops had difficulty passing it. I like how they say National Guard and Reserve troops. Like, okay, even the men there were having troubles with this. Like, yeah, because they weren't working out when they were supposed to. About 44% of women failed the test from October 2020 to April of 2021, compared to 7% of men. ACFT scores collected during the diagnostic period show some groups failing at a noticeably higher rate. The biggest impacts were observed for women, but we also see differences in pass rates across components, with the U.S. Army Reserve and the Army National Guard lagging behind the regular Army, and across military occupational specialties. Obviously, if women don't feel that they can pass the test necessary for them to earn promotions, they aren't going to stick around for the job for very long. The new plan will be run on a trial basis, with active duty soldiers to begin taking the test in April. However, they will not be penalized if they fail. If all goes to plan, the test will be officially implemented in October. All Right. That is really interesting. So now you don't have to rely on the person next to you. And even if they're, it doesn't have to be a woman that you're not relying on. It could also be a National Guard individual that you don't have to rely on now because, they didn't even have to pass a physical fitness test the same as you. Makes no damn sense at all. Ridiculous. Makes no sense. And it's concerning if you're in the Army and you actually get called into combat. I don't know. Who am I? Just a guy. Just a guy. All right, so the next thing that we're going to watch here is going to be Biden goes over to Poland to increase troop morale in front of God knows what's going to happen, and he'll tell us here in a minute. He'll actually tell these troops. But the first thing we're going to watch is him sitting in the dining facility in the chow hall, or the DFAC, depending on which part of the military you're in. In this case, I would assume it would be the chow hall. But here we go. It is going to be a video of him seemingly sitting around these people. And I'll just kind of talk you through it as I show it. And here we go. So you see Biden basically sitting there about to eat a piece of pizza. Now, he seems to have burned himself. So he reaches across the table and grabs seemingly another soldier's drink and says, "Thank you." So he takes their drink and begins to eat their pizza without them eating it. By the way, none of these men are eating behind them. None of these soldiers are eating, which is usually kind of the standard here. The standard is that the highest ranking officer, which so happens to be the commander-in-chief of the military at this point, generally eats after the individuals who are beneath him in the hierarchy. Okay, so he burns himself, and as you're seeing this, there's probably 5 or 6 men, soldiers that you can see behind him, who are looking at him seemingly in disbelief over the way that he's acting and laughing at him, making kind of ridiculous looking faces at the fact that it looks like it's literally take your grandpa to work day here at the Army. Like, this man looks like he belongs nowhere near. It literally looks to me like it's take your grandpa to work day. All these soldiers are sitting around laughing at Joe Biden while he completely goes against most military norms and then burns himself like the old and able man that he is, and then steals a soldier's drink to stop it and then thanks them. All right. So if you haven't seen this video yet, go ahead and check it out. I'll have it within the Substack this week, which I should go ahead and talk about. You should join the Substack. We go ahead and do a podcast companion every single week, right? redpillrevolution.substack.com. redpillrevolution.substack.com. And you can follow along. It includes all of the articles, all of the videos, all of the documents, all of the fun stuff from this week's episode. All right, so go ahead right now, redpillrevolution.substack.com. If you're driving, maybe don't do that, but wait until you get home because I know you're so excited to do it. redpillrevolution.substack.com. All right, now, you'll see this video in there. All right, it'll be right there for you. And if you're watching, that means you're on the Patreon. That means that you paid the $5 a month at least to get the video episode, which also includes our Discord server, where we can talk about all these things in real time as they happen, recent, current events, old events, all the episode stuff on the not on the Substack, on the Patreon, patreon.com/redpillrevolt. All right, $5 for that first tier, $15 for the second tier, which will include a live episode every single week as we start to get some people onto that tier. All right, looking forward to it. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on. The next thing here is going to be Joe Biden's actual speech to these soldiers. So he stands in front of the Army and the other soldiers that are here. I'm assuming it's probably a mix. It's probably not just Army. But he stands in front of them and gives a speech. And one thing that you should probably point out, now the title of this says, Joe Biden visits U.S. troops in Poland, close to the Ukrainian border. And this was posted by France 24 English, which is a news source, which is seemingly the only news source that had this video on it, interestingly enough. So let's go ahead and watch this video. We'll see what he has to say. Now, the key thing that I want you to listen for, and I haven't watched this whole thing yet. I'm interested to see it. But the key thing I want you to listen for is the part where he says specifically that, A, he's been to Ukraine a ton, which we know. The big guy has been to Ukraine more than most people. That's where he allegedly launders his money. Allegedly. But who's to say if that's true? Maybe Hunter Biden's laptop, but I digress. But the next thing that he talks about is how the fact that they will soon find out about Ukraine and the people that are there, and how the videos of the families crying are true, because you will soon be in Ukraine. So listen out for that part too, and then we'll see what else he has to say, or basically babbles his way through this silly speech. And if we hit it, and at any point it begins to slow down, we'll end it, because we don't want to listen to this man for 8 full minutes. I know you don't, and I know I don't. But I'll jump in here or there, and we'll talk about it. So here we go.
On the border with Ukraine. Let's take a listen.
The country, including me, owes you, and owes you big, number one. Number two, we're a unique country in many ways, and we're the only country in the world not organized based on geography or ethnicity or religion or race or anything else. We're based on an idea. Literally the only country in the world based on an idea. That we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all women and men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Sounds corny, but it's the truth of who we are.
Sounds corny. That's literally what this man just said about the fact that we should all be created equal. It sounds corny. That's his reflection on that portion of the fundamental documents that create our entire belief system that he's talking about and bragging about here, is that it sounds corny. Interesting to know. I mean, we probably already knew that he didn't have much belief in these founding documents, but just to hear him say it in front of a bunch of soldiers that our founding documents sound corny is, I don't know, probably not a good start to a speech. Maybe that's just my opinion.
We've never lived up to it, but we've never walked away from it. And the rest of the world looks to us. Because, we not only lead by the example of our power, but by the power of our example. And your generation combines both. The rest of the world looks at you and sees who you are. They see you are a multi-ethnic group of Americans that are, in fact, together and united in one resolve to defend your country and to help those who need help. That's why you're here. I spent a lot of time in Ukraine when I was a senator and vice president. I've spoken to the Rada in the days when they, in fact, didn't have what you'd call with and was there in the Maidan when the former leader had to take off and head into Russia. And but the Ukrainian people have a lot of backbone. They have a lot of guts, and I'm sure you're observing it. And I don't mean just the military, which is we've been trained in since back when Russia moved into in the southeast Ukraine, but also the average citizen. Look at how they're stepping up. Look at how they're stepping up. And you're going to see when you're there, and some of you have been there. You're going to see women, young people standing in the middle in front of a damn tank, just saying, "I'm not leaving. I'm holding my ground." They're incredible. But they take a lot of inspiration from us. And a woman who just died, the Secretary of State, used to have an expression. She said, "We are the essential nation." It sounds like a bit of hyperbole, but
So we heard him just say there, oh, the Ukrainian people are so tough, and not just the military, the people, the women, standing in front of the damn tank. So then he goes on to say that you will see it when you are there. When you are there, you will see it. And now he shows his hand. And you see, you would maybe see some of the expressions if half these soldiers weren't covering their face with masks in the background to virtue signal on behalf of this administration. However, he just said what the next move is. He just said, you will see it when you are over there. Why? Under all the times that we've said we are not going to send troops, that is not what the United States is intending on doing. We are not going to involve ourselves in this fight on the ground. Is he now telling soldiers in Poland, on the border of Ukraine, that you will see it when you are there? You will witness these things. They're harder in front of the damn tank. But he just said it. They're going to, according to the President of the United States, just said that they're going to send troops into Ukraine. Now later, from my understanding of reading, and I haven't double, triple, quadruple checked on this, but from what I saw and other people speaking about this online, was that they later had to retract these statements because it would be quite concerning if you were, I don't know, Vladimir Putin, if you were hearing the president of the United States speaking to his military miles from the border of Ukraine in Poland and telling them that they will see how the Ukrainian people's strength during the time that they are stationed or deployed, which would what that would be, in Ukraine. He just said it. But now they had to back off that statement because what is that? What is that word? Oh yeah, we've heard it a few times now. World War III is what that would mean. And our president just blubbered his way through the fact that he believes he's going to send our troops. The commander-in-chief of the military just said he was going to send directly to their faces these men and women to the front lines of Ukraine so they can witness the strength of the in front of the tank. Unbelievable. So, let's see if we can pull anything out of these next 2 minutes, and if we just begin stumbling and rumbling, we'll end this listen into this babbling old man. Here we go.
The truth of the matter is, you are the organizing principle around which the rest of the world is, the free world is moving. And we're in the midst of, and I don't want to sound too philosophic here, but you're in the midst of a fight between democracies and oligarchs. Xi Jinping, who I've spent more time with, they tell me, than any other world leader, points out to me he believes in China that democracies can't succeed in the 21st century. The reason is things are moving so fast, change is happening so quickly, that democracies require consensus. And we can't put together consensus as quickly as autocrats can. So what's at stake, not just in what we're doing here in Ukraine to try to help the Ukrainian people and keep the massacre from continuing, but beyond that, what's at stake is what are your kids and grandkids going to look like in terms of their freedom? What's happening? The last 10 years have been fewer democracies that have been formed than we've lost in the world. So this is what you're engaged in is much more than just whether or not you can alleviate the pain and suffering of the people of Ukraine. We're in a new phase. Your generation, we're at an inflection point. About every 4 or 5 generations that comes along and changes, fundamental change takes place. The world ain't going to be the same, not because of Ukraine, but I'm not going to be the same 10, 15 years from now in terms of our organizational structures. And the question is, who's going to prevail? Are democracies going to prevail and the values we share, or autocracy is going to prevail? And that's really what's at stake. So what you're doing is consequential, really consequential. And as I said to a group in the dining room, you all in the chow mess hall, the fact of the matter is that you are the finest, this is not hyperbole, you are the finest fighting force in the history of the world. Let me say it again. The finest fighting force in the history of the world. Part of the reason is you've had to fight so much for the last 20 years. It's for real. There are not many generations. You know, the greatest generation was my father's generation, your grandparents' generation.
All right, the first thing I'd like to point out is that the President of the United States has his dress shirt unbuttoned like he's in Miami Vice. Top button isn't buttoned, not expected when you're not wearing a tie, understood. Second to top button, all right, I'll give you that. All right, show a little chest hair, Joe. Go ahead, have at it. But to not have the third button of your dress shirt buttoned? Did this man roll up with a gold chain? Like, what in the world? He literally has 3 buttons on his dress shirt unbuttoned, like he's been laying out in the sun next to a pool in Poland. Now, the next thing I'd like to point out is the man says, I don't want to sound too philosophical here, and then goes on to say that we're in a fight for democracy, and you all, Joe, I don't think you're in any danger of ever in your entire life, in any sentence you could ever complete fully on your own, being philosophical. I don't think you are in any danger of that at all. Now, the next thing he says is, you are the greatest fighting force in the history of man. Ever. The greatest fighting force ever. But you don't have standardized fitness tests? You mean the oldies and the guard and the women all get different standards of fitness tests, and that's how you create the best fighting force in the history of man? I don't know, Joe. I don't know. Let's give it a couple more minutes. We got 4 minutes left. Let's see if we can make our way through the entirety of this, because I believe there's got to be some stuff in here that nobody's picking up, because this full video is nowhere but this French news station. All right, so let's go ahead and clue in on these next couple minutes, and then we'll move on.
World War II generation. But nobody, no other generation has had to be in a battle, have your buddy blown up, wipe the blood off the Humvee and get back in and saddle up and go for another 6 months. Second time I flew in, I've been in and out of Iraq and Afghanistan about 40 times, 38 times. And every time I'd go in, I'd see, like the last time I flew in, and I flew in I'm up in the cockpit when I was landing in Bagram. And there were 6 people came up with the cargo, basically, while I was flying. And I said, how many of you it's your first tour of duty? Not one person raised their hand. Second tour, not one person. Third tour of duty, 3. Fourth, 1. Fifth, 1, and sixth, 1. That's never happened before. One thing to go in and be in the middle of a battle, go home and get sent back again. And so one of the things I've said, and I've gotten in trouble for saying, but not anymore, I've been saying it since I've got elected. We have a sacred obligation. Only one obligation is government. We have a lot of obligations to the elderly, the poor, children, etc. Only one sacred obligation: to equip those that we send to war, and to care for them and their families when they come home. And so you all are an amazing group of women and men. And I just want to thank you for your service. As your commander-in-chief, I mean it from the bottom of my heart. As I said, it's not new to me. My son spent a year in Iraq. He spent 6 months in Kosovo. Won the Bronze Star, the Conspicuous Service Medal, and other awards. Proudest thing I ever did was put that uniform on. Like many of you, he didn't have to go either. He was the Attorney General of the state of Delaware in the Delaware National Guard. And what happened was, when his unit was going to be sent overseas, he had to go to Washington to get an equivalent of a dispensation, because you either had to be federal property or state property. He was the Attorney General of the state. He had to give up the office in order to be able to go with his troops. The point is, but there were hundreds and thousands of people like my son.
Now, at the bottom of this little news bulletin here, it says a quote from Joe Biden during the speech, which you heard. He said, "You are in a fight for democracy." Who, Joe? Who is fighting for who is fighting here? That's a very specific word. If you're going to use the word fight, and you're especially going to use that to the people in the military, and they're going to talk about their quote-unquote buddy getting blown up, wiping his blood off the Humvee, and then getting in and saddling up for, like, if there truly was people in the audience like that, and you're speaking on that in that terms, and they've been through a situation like that, they probably don't want to hear about that. They don't probably want to have to relive that situation where they're just softly throwing out there by their commander-in-chief that your buddy was blown up and then you wiped his blood off the Humvee. Like, probably not what you want to hear if you're a legitimate combat veteran who's been in a situation like that from your commander-in-chief, especially while you're sitting on the border of a literal potential world war scenario, and he's telling you you're going over there, and then tells you you're in a fight for democracy. And that's what the commander-in-chief just said directly to the individuals in the military on the border of Ukraine. Now, I don't see us pulling very much out of this next I don't know, minute or so. So let's go ahead and move on. Now, if you'd like to finish out that minute, get on the Substack. Whole video will be there for you. All right. Now, the next thing we're going to listen to, and we're going to jump a little bit into this situation here, but actually, we'll jump into, what is it? Ketanji Brown Jackson, the Supreme Court Justice nominee. I believe she's actually been sworn in at this point. However, before we do that, let's touch on this Ukrainian situation. Now, this was a tweet by Adam Townsend at Adam Scramble on Twitter. Go ahead and now, thank you guys so much for listening. Let's go ahead and head over to the substack.com, redpillrevolution.substack.com. You'll see the full entire, every video that we just discussed. Every video. You know, you'll see the article from Rebel News. You'll have all the videos that I just discussed, so you can go watch them in full yourself. I'll also include the entire days of the hearing, so you can listen to those on there. And the next thing you need to do is go ahead to Patreon, patreon.com/redpillrevolution. Actually, patreon.com/redpillrevolt. Sorry, Red Pill Revolt. So patreon.com/redpillrevolt. Substack is redpillrevolution.substack.com. Now, Patreon, $5. What you get is the full entire video episode every single week. You also get an entire bonus video regarding some conversations that we have here, and then which I'll be kind of discussing and posting about, which will be a little bit of a discussion later on this week that I'll be posting on there. But you'll get all of that and more. You'll also get access to the Discord server. So go ahead, $5 a month. And you are supporting me. I appreciate it so much. You're in the community. Go ahead and do it. Patreon.com/redpillrevolt. And go ahead and sign up for that. If you do the $15 a month, once we get a good amount of people on that tier, and I don't mean a good amount like a ton, just a few of you on there that's worth having the conversation live for, we will be doing an additional episode live every single week, discussing all user-generated topics. So you guys will send your topics to me through that Discord and on Instagram, and then I'll go live on Instagram, talk about what the topics are going to be, and then we'll change it over to Patreon and talk about those topics specifically right on that live. Now, the next thing you can do is go to givesendgo.com/redpillrevolution to make a donation. I would appreciate it so much. I work really hard on this stuff. I do tons and tons of hours of video editing. I sit down and shoot this video. I edit everything. I do all of it. I do every single bit of it myself. So I would really appreciate it if you could support the show. Givesendgo.com/redpillrevolution. And lastly, if you haven't yet, go ahead and press that subscribe button. Go ahead and press it. And then leave a 5-star review. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you are. Leave a 5-star review. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you so much. I hope you have a wonderful week, and we will talk again next week. Thank you so much. Welcome to the revolution.